Hi, I'm Jo Clark, and thanks so much for joining me today. This is the Redefining Midlife podcast, a podcast designed for the 40-plus woman who is determined to challenge society's myths and beliefs around midlife. It's for the woman who is inspired and ready to define midlife her way. Join me each week as I chat to health and wellness experts for up-to-date information on how to live well, as well as some special conversations with incredible everyday women redefining what midlife can look like. Here's to making our next half of life even better than the first. Food. There's no shortage of information regarding this topic. What we should eat, how often we should eat, the amount of food we should have, the best times we should eat, and so it goes on and on. There's no doubting the role it plays in our lives, yet the importance of food and its nutritional benefits often gets lost in the important message. Nutrition is one of the 6 pillars of wellness I incorporate into my life, as well as into the Better Than Before membership for women. And research has shown that perimenopause and the few years post-menopause is a critical period of health for women. Supporting your body through the lens of the wellness pillars will not only help you during this phase of life, but also well beyond this time. Viewing food as medicine and understanding how it impacts the other systems in our body can help you decide what's best for you to eat, and in doing so, support your body and its needs. For some women, the role of food may even help to reduce some of the symptoms of perimenopause and menopause. And to discuss this further, I welcome Sarah McLachlan to the podcast as our guest expert for this episode. Sarah is a naturopath, but she's keen to let you know that she isn't your average naturopath. She drinks coffee, hates calorie counting with a passion, and she's all too familiar with the experience of mum burnout. It was after she got frustrated with feeling sweaty, anxious, irritated, and overweight during the lockdowns in 2020 that she decided to regain control of her health. Using personalised nutrition, Sarah released nearly 20 kilograms, as well as the perimenopausal symptoms that she was experiencing at the time, including hot flushes, fatigue, and insomnia. Now she supports other women in their 40s as they navigate through perimenopause with her program, the Chaos to Calm Method. Welcome, Sarah, to the podcast. I'm really looking forward to our chat today because there's going to be some very important information that you're going to be able to share with us and to help us live a fuller, better life through this middle of year period.
Thanks, Jo. I'm really excited to be here today because I just love talking about this phase of life, and I get really excited that more people like us talking about it, spreading the word that actually it can be a magnificent phase of life. It doesn't have to be awful. So, yay.
I know, yay, because you hear all of the doom and the gloom that can happen. And certainly some women do suffer, but there's also things that we can help ourselves through, not only just through perimenopausal symptoms, but also just in general to feel better within ourselves. So that is good news indeed for all of us.
Yes, it's definitely a double yay, isn't it? Because it can be tricky, it can feel uncomfortable, there's a lot going on in our bodies, but definitely there's so much that we can do to help buffer and reduce the impact of those fluctuations on ourselves mentally and physically.
For sure. Sarah, before we dive into the deeper things that we're going to be discussing today, just want to get and let me get a feel for what you were like and for our listeners. So tell us more about what was younger Sarah like, and what were her dreams and her thoughts, and what was she imagining when she was a younger woman?
Well, it's really interesting that you asked me that because I was actually talking a bit about it the other day with some friends and the sporting team, and younger me was definitely a follower, not a leader, and always trying to fit in. And so I also didn't really have any dreams or aspirations. Like when I worked for one of the big phone companies and, do your review with your team leader and they'd be like, so what do you want in 1 year, 5 year, 10 years? And I was like, I don't know, maybe have kids or something. I hadn't actually really ever thought about anything like that until really just recently. So I was definitely not living a naturopathic lifestyle. I'm just going to put that out there. And I became a naturopath later on in my career after having some of my kids. So I was probably quite different to the person that I am these days, having lots of fun, active, busy socially all the time and that kind of thing, but really kind of just moving through life superficially, like not realizing that I could be the creator of my life and influence, and choose what happens to me, how it plays out. Yeah.
Do you think that's come with maturity? Because I know for some, when you're younger, you just can't see. 5 years just seems like a lifetime, doesn't it? When you're 20, I mean, 30 just seems like you'd be ancient.
Yeah.
So do you think that comes with maturity, or was there a particular catalyst when you said, I've always, when I was younger, I was a follower. Was there a catalyst that sort of made you change, or do you think it was maturity?
I think it's a bit of maturity, but also in my 30s, I had 4 kids across that time period. I had my eldest when I was 29 and 9 months. So most of that time was spent pregnant or breastfeeding. But we did have some significant, major traumatic events happen to us in that time period as well. And I think they were the catalyst there. Why is this stuff always happening to me? Why does it happen? And spent many years really stuck in that I can't change, these things keep happening. How much more is that going to happen to us? And then actually finished my naturopathic studies and wanted some mentoring.
Mm-hmm.
I did have one mentor that was more clinical focused, but then wanted some business mentoring. And that woman really changed my life and changed my perspective, and felt really uncomfortable and challenged a lot, because she was just like, well, you can change that. You choose how you think about these things, and you get to be in control and in charge of that. And so that really started that process. And that was early 40s. So, yeah.
It's so empowering, isn't it, when you finally get that message that, yes, you can actually make some decisions and create your life the way that you would like it. And also being in that busy period of the 30s with younger children, you kind of get stuck into that groove of just surviving through the day as well, where you don't have the headspace. So as the children start to become a little bit older or leave home, or whatever stage that might happen for you, you've just got that little bit more headspace where you can start to think about more how you would like your future to be and how you would like your life to look.
Yeah,
That's a
exactly.
gift.
Yeah, it really was. My 30s was definitely about survival mode. And having 4 kids is busy.
I can imagine.
Along, and my husband was really working 7 days a week, and I was studying for part of that time as well. So yeah, it was a lot of just getting through the day was a significant achievement, actually. And it really is when you've got little kids, especially in that newborn phase, getting through the day.
I mean, you'd laugh at somebody saying, oh, create your own life. Yeah, right, this is my life. What are you talking about?
And you kind of have, and that's okay too, because you'll have those phases and periods when it is super busy and you can't even look up, like you just swim like Dory, just swimming.
Yes.
And you got your head down and just making it through that day. But yeah, then your kids get a little older, and you do get the opportunity to look up and see what's coming or what is there, and what do I want to be there.
Yeah. And I love these sort of discussions too that we're having now, because so many women still in their 40s, in their 50s and beyond, still can sometimes be stuck in the groove where they don't have that realization, or feel like they've given permission, where they can start to think about, well, I can create what I want, and I don't have to do what I've always done before. So these they're really important conversations to start having.
And I think so too, like for maybe not so much our generation, but the ones before us were very much those sex-based roles meant that they felt that, well, 2 things. Who am I now when I'm not needed for caring? And as your kids get older, but also not really able to change or do anything differently. Like we've been told since always that we can do whatever we want. We have to do everything, but do whatever we want. And so we have that sort of different idea that we can do it there. But also I think acknowledging that your 40s, although your kids are getting older, I find with most of my clients and with myself as well, it's actually one of the really busiest phases of
Mm.
life as well. Yeah.
Mm.
So
I can agree with that, and even in towards it changes. It's you're busy at every stage of your life, filled with different things, and then slowly, as your children may start to become older, so too do your parents. So a lot of people then have the children. They're not so much looking after the children; they might be looking after aging and unwell parents. So it changes with so much flux that.
yeah.
Yeah, you really need to look after yourself when you realize that you've got, even if it's going to be busy, it may be filled with different life stages.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much available to us these days that was, like in terms of entertainment, socially,
Mm.
um and travel, you know. No one really traveled when I was a kid. It was a massive thing to go overseas, but it's much more accessible
Yeah,
to do
yeah.
these days. Yeah.
Sarah, I'm really interested about your journey into naturopathy. So, what made you choose that path? You said earlier in the start of our conversation that you were working, was it a telco? So,
Yeah, yeah.
so you've left that career path, and what made you to move into this one?
Yeah, well, originally when I first left school, I studied psychology and I was going to be a psychologist. That's what I wanted to do. So I finished that degree and realized and I was going to do educational psychology, so with a interest in kids. And then I realized actually I felt that that was going to be too distressing potentially for me and too much. So I went and worked for a whiteboard company
Ah,
in sales there, and then moved into a telco because it had better or more, bigger company has more job opportunities there. I worked in internal communications after I got off the phones from customer service, and I really enjoyed that and loved that. And that moved me to Melbourne. I met my husband there, and yeah, we started to have kids. And my kids, my second child, kept getting this really weird rash in the nappy area, really like ulcered, like not just sort of a nappy
mm,
rash thing.
yeah,
And lots of doctor visits, no, nothing really came about of it. And a chance conversation with someone, or overhearing one at Jimbaroo, taking
yeah.
the child to Jimbaroo, um, meant that we went to a naturopath who was a homeopath as well. And in one session, she was like, "Oh yeah, I've seen that before. You just need to take out lactose." And so we switched our cow's dairy to other things or avoided. That was it. She never had it again. I was like, "Well, that was amazing," and how significant just changing your food, how that can impact you. I was like, I want to do that. I want to help people understand what to eat. Um, so I enrolled in naturopathy and was 2009. So yeah, I was like, this is going to be really great. I had no idea how intense the naturopathy degree is. It's 4 years full time. So I didn't do it
Mm.
full time, I did it part time. But the amount of biochemistry and science and things in it is, I mean, I did do a science degree before, so I did love, and those aspects I did love, but it's just a lot of work,
Mm.
especially when you have little kids. And then I had two kids, and then by the end of the time I studied, I had four kids. So it was big, but that was my driver or motivation there. And then when I left uni, I really just wanted to help people with food and understanding food as medicine and how to eat, like
Yes.
how to eat to support your health now and into the future as well. So that's when I did some more training after that to become a metabolic balance practitioner, to be able to do personalized nutrition. And that gave me the tools to be able to do that. Whereas I felt I didn't quite have that when I left naturopathy college.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And be
So
one of those careers too that the more you know you don't know. So to be constant.
yeah, it does often feel like that. So yes, there's constant learning and research changes. And so
Yes.
yeah, it changes what we do or how we approach things. But other times research just confirms what we know
Mm.
naturopathically or naturopaths have been
Mm.
doing since forever. But yeah, it was a big shift in lifestyle because I think as well, like my earlier self was very much raised in the doctors know best household, and you give over that control and just do what they tell you to do with your health. And that shaped my labors and birth with my first two kids. And then it really was about me taking back control of my health, my kids' health, and shifting that to being more preventative. And I had a lot of health issues in there as well. So that, to address. And so I wanted to, when I saw that you can do that with food and the way that lifestyle changes, the way you do things in life, my mind was blown, actually. So, yeah.
And that becomes more empowering too, doesn't it? That word comes up a fair bit of being empowered, but it is. It's when you go to the doctor, it's often just with a Polaroid snapshot of what something is presenting right at that point in time. And often, for acute care, that's what you need. You need to fix that problem. But I think modalities such as naturopathy is starting to come into more discussion now and seen as a viable place where you can have extra support to look at other things and look further down the stream about what might be causing some of the signs and symptoms that you could actually go to the doctor, or you may actually go before. So and we'll talk more about that further into the discussion. But you mentioned when we had a pre-chat that with COVID and lockdowns and all that went with it, 2020 was a really big year of personal growth for you, and you came to a few realizations. So I'd like to explore that a little bit more. What was happening in your life at the time, and what did you end up deciding to do?
Yeah, so I had been practicing as a naturopath since mid-2018 by that point, and was face-to-face. I'd just opened a clinic with a massage therapist. The two of us had signed the lease, and we're excited. I actually had a goal. That was one of my goals, so I was super excited to be getting onto that. And it was going okay, and it was a lot of work, and it meant that I was out of the house as well as in a clinic seeing people face-to-face. And then we had our first lockdown. I was in Melbourne at the time, so that was March 2020. We had closed the clinic. And as that time period went on and on, the massage therapist couldn't work. And so, she rightly said, this is going to go on longer than just 6 months that they're predicting. And she was correct. So we ended up ending the lease and paying that out. And so that was a significant financial impact there as well. And I just felt really depressed. I've felt quite low in myself because I felt like I'd failed, and which in hindsight is ridiculous because it was not anything I could control in that situation. And it wasn't, as I know now, the end. It was just part of that process. And so in that time period, just before that and leading into it. So in July 2019, I actually signed up with the mentor who started changing my life. And that was 12 months of mentoring. And she really changed my perspective on that and what was happening, or she helped me to get through it. But yeah, it was a pretty tough time period. I had my sister checking in with me daily to make sure I was eating, and like I was really struggling around getting up and getting on with things. And it was hard in Melbourne because each day was the same, but you also didn't know when was this going to end or change, or even how. So then, as is my style, I jumped in feet first with another mentor who was helping practitioners like me move their business online. And that was the best decision I ever made. And that's when I also became a metabolic balance coach as well. So I did that training, worked with her, designed or put myself through my program, and completely changed my health, how I felt, and mentally. So I knew that food impacted how we felt, but this was like, to say life-changing is not an understatement, because it literally did change my life. Like, I felt more like myself. Mentally, I was focused and not so, dark or black thinking there. And yeah, my physical health changed as well. So it was great. It meant that I showed up for my kids in the way I wanted to, because we homeschool all the time. So I need to be there for them, and I work for myself. My husband works for himself, and I help him run that business as well. So I need to be able to show up and do those things. I like to play sport. Those are the things that I like to be active as well. And I felt quite lost in that time period leading up to that. And I know I wasn't alone. I know many mums particularly felt that way too in those lockdowns. But it's one of those sliding doors moments. You think one's closing, but then actually it was, yes, it was. And I had to close my clinic. But actually, the best thing that could have happened to me was part of that. And so, realizing that I could either just quit everything. I was thinking about just, all right, this is too hard. I'm just going to quit naturopathy altogether and not do it anymore. But that didn't feel right and sit right. So I, as sometimes happens, things get put in your path, or it was an email that I got and I looked at it and I was like, yeah, I'm just going to do that. That sounds excellent. That sounds like exactly what I need. So, even though I was feeling that low and down, I still made that choice and got back in control of what was happening for me and what I could do, what I could focus on rather than what I couldn't and what was happening to me. So I guess it was more about choosing that life be happening for me and me creating that. And I think that was definitely that from that July 2019 and the work on mindset and mental health, and that with that mentor with Tammy had really put me in a spot where I could see to make that decision, whereas I think past self would have just let it go and moved on to doing something different or not working or any of
That's a
those
powerful
things.
mind shift, isn't it? To have that's, life is happening to me, not for me. So what can I do? What are those little decisions that I can make? And there are 40 to 80 plus decisions that you can make every day that you can control. I mean, there's stuff beyond our control, but you are able to use that to your advantage. Well, how can I change? This is a situation. What can I do? So yeah, that's great. And it's changed obviously your business now from where it was to
Yeah,
how it can
that's
look in
right.
the future, and you've got more control.
Yeah. And even at the time I was like, well, even if I do this thing and it only helps me, it's what I need to do.
Yeah.
And and my husband's really supportive, and he was like, just do it. Don't worry about how much it's going to cost or anything like that. You need to do something. So just did it.
Well done, you. I'm glad you've
Yeah,
made
I
the
know.
choice. Yeah.
Thanks, past self. That was great.
And that's it. You've got to go through those struggles, don't you, to see what's possible. And now you've got that evidence that you've been able to do this, and that's going
Yeah.
to take you to the next level again. So it's
Well,
always
that's it. And I knew from the past I could do hard things. I've done lots of really hard things, been through lots of hard times, and I still came out the other end different and, but mostly okay.
yeah.
So I was like, I'll get through this. I know that, but I need to do these things to be able to get through it.
For sure. Pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and look to what's next. It's really something that
Yeah. And it was, thinking about things that you can control, and that early on in those lockdowns, I said to my husband, I'm not going to drink alcohol because I feel like if I did start, it'd be really difficult to stop. And that was another great decision. In hindsight, I was like, yep, because I know that the way that I am or way things are wired in my brain, I can become quite easily reliant or dependent on things. So that was being able to make that decision to not do something as well was what I needed.
Yes.
I felt like it just would have been too easy to just drink a lot all the time.
And that's another slippery slope and can lead you
It is.
down something
Yeah.
else.
Yeah, that's right.
One of the areas you work with, Sarah, and we'll talk about this more now, is the years of perimenopause, the changes that happen in a woman's body during this period. And it takes lots of women by surprise. So finding ways to support ourselves during this transitional time means looking at different wellness pillars, such as like our food, movement, sleep, and to look at these sorts of things through completely different lenses. So often what I talk about in my workshops that I present or with my online community, if you're feeling below average now in your 40s and your 50s, you've just got to imagine, well, if you're feeling like this now and you don't do anything different, how on earth do you think you're going to be feeling further down the track? Because, the next 10, 20, 30 years, on top of what you're feeling now. So for some women, they need that a little bit of extra support and a support team of professionals around them. Can you just explain what somebody like yourself could help, or how they could help with somebody going through some of these changes, and they might just need that little bit of support? You mentioned personalized nutrition earlier on, so perhaps you can explore that a little bit more now.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah, so the way a lot of women come to me, and that's actually what motivated me as well. I was like, oh my gosh, if I feel this way now, what am I going to feel like in 5 or 10 years? Like, I actually was really quite terrified about that. And many women say that to me when I talk to them, and we're talking about, how can I support them? The same thing, because it's really real, because you're like, oh, I'm midlife, but actually, how am I going to, I feel so stiff and sore or miserable. What's going to happen in that time period? So for a lot of my clients, I provide structure and accountability, but also the knowledge, because they've tried all these different things. They've tried keto, low carb, fasting, shakes, Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig. Like, women in our age bracket, we've been dieting since, unfortunately, you were in single digits, So they've tried a lot of stuff, and then they notice, well, that actually doesn't work anymore. I can't just skip out on drinking alcohol or eating sweets and lose that few kilos and get back into my clothes again. And they start to notice that they get that weight creep. But most often, because I work in perimenopause, acknowledging that, the pre-phase, which it takes women by surprise, because it can actually start like mid-30s and early 40s, and usually mood, heavy bleeding, or those sort of menstrual cycle changes and that weight gain are the first things that they notice and talk to me about. So I help them, the personalized nutrition plans, it helps them understand what to eat, how to eat, when to eat, that really works to support their hormone balance and reduce the impact of the fluctuations that come in perimenopause, because progesterone declines sort of quietly, I suppose, but estrogen doesn't go without a fight, and it's,
it's a
really high, really low. But there's a lot that we can do by getting the food right. Eating the foods that are optimal for you at this phase of life really helps to smooth that fluctuation. So for lots of women I work with across perimenopause and menopause, and before and after that as well. But that's where we start to reduce the heavy bleeding. We reduce the sweats or the flushes and improve their mood. And the biggest key, like sleep is the greatest act of self-care that you can give to yourself, is the opportunity to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night and not be scrolling or binging Netflix until midnight or 1, and then having only 5 or 6 hours sleep. It really impacts significantly your hormones and your cortisol levels in your body and your blood glucose levels. And from my perspective, cortisol and insulin are the master hormones, and they set the tone for everything else in your body there. So if we're increasing that stress load or increasing that stress hormone cortisol and messing about with our blood glucose levels and insulin levels, we're going to feel cranky, sweaty, exhausted, and it even impacts your menstrual cycle and your period there too. So for a lot of clients, I teach them, it's all about teaching them, understanding how to put your plate together, what works really well for women in this phase, and how to use that ongoing for life. So it's not just about a short-term solution. I like to teach my clients, you do this now, but also let's create that new normal, that long-term healthy lifestyle, so you see how to put your plates together. And then the flow-on effect of that is, of course, their families benefit and their children benefit, and they all learn a lot about food, and they get to see, that food in particular that was producing that symptom, or that was, they can often see particular foods that will increase, or particular lifestyle activities or changes that impact their sleep or impact their flushes, sweats, mood, that kind of thing too. So it's all about the food with me, and food is medicine, and I use the personalized nutrition plans for that as well. But that it's, and great for helping with weight loss because we're balancing those hormones, but great for lots of other stuff too, particularly things like migraines, headaches, joint pain. A lot of that all creeps up in perimenopause as well. They're the surprise things that people feel as well, because we're reducing inflammation in the body, which is that I always feel like it's a very esoteric naturopathic concept that we're always talking about inflammation, but it is an immune response, and yes, we do want it sometimes, but when it's switched on all like chronically at a low level, it impacts how we feel, and how we move through our days, and even weight gain, all of those sorts of things. So yeah, for my clients, it's lots of teaching, but also lots of support and accountability, and making it efficient for them because they're busy as well. I don't say easy, because they have to do the work, but I'll show them the path. I'll light it up for them, tell them where to go, what to do.
And they're having somebody there to help guide, show the way, hold you accountable. That's sort of key to it as well, isn't it? Is that, if you've got a question or you're finding something you're not sure, then they would go back to you and just say, well, what do I do here? If this is, I've discovered this has happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, they have lots of contact and lots of access to me as well to ask those questions. And we adapt and adjust as we go on, depending on how their body's responding and how they're feeling with the things that they're doing. So I use a lot of food as medicine based. I use a little bit of herb and nutrients as well if needed, but I tend not to prescribe so much. And that makes me, I suppose, a little different to other naturopaths, and we all tend to be a bit different because we all have our own different experiences of life and interests that direct us. So yeah, obviously I'm working more in this hormonal space of perimenopause and menopause, but whereas other naturopaths might work more in that autoimmune conditions or gut health or many of those things. So yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think a lot of people are probably, well, not a lot of people, there may be a group of people who have just have had an experience or know of somebody who's gone to a naturopath and they've got all these lotions and potions, foul-smelling concoctions and bottles of pills, and that's what their image of a naturopath would be. Whereas, you're presenting something that is different and, again, individualized for a particular person. Like there'd be commonalities that you would suggest for your clients, but then individualize according to that person's needs and what their body requires.
Yeah, and I do lots of blood tests to help with that personalization as well. So we really get to see what is happening inside their body. I don't do hormone testing because I don't find the reward is worth the cost, but also it's very difficult when someone has a disappearing period to take the bloods at the right day or stage to tell us that. And honestly, I don't need it because I see so many women and I can get a really strong understanding of where they're at by talking with them. And it almost most of the time doesn't particularly matter because I know we're going to take care of it with the food and with what we're going to do. So and get them to keep their period as long as possible, which I know doesn't always thrill everyone, but it is great for your overall health and brain
Sarah,
health and cardiovascular, all of that.
I still have my period, so I'm just
yes.
Some women it can go on for a long time, but it's I look at that, I've got to be the glass half full or the glass half empty, and you go, well, I'm going to be the glass half full because I know for my body it's going to be holding me in good stead. As annoying really as it can be, being
I know. And that's the thing. And also, helping women understand too that pain and isn't a normal part of a period. And we're always, I don't know about you, but I just got told that's your period and put up with it and shush up when I started getting my cycle. But for many women, they don't realize that pain and discomfort is not a normal part of it. So I teach my clients as well, like what is a healthy period and how to use it as a report card each month on how your body is going and what's going on for it. So we're looking at the color of your blood loss and any pain or water retention, those kind of things as well. It really is another vital sign for us.
For sure. Your body gives you little clues all the time, doesn't it? It's just up to us to listen to what they are.
Yeah.
And when you're presented with certain things, then, another decision happens. Are you going to do something and act on it? or are you going to ignore it? In previous podcasts with guest experts coming in, it's when people start to ignore those little signs, little symptoms that their body is giving them, that further down the track there may be a consequence from that. And we just know statistically from all of the studies that there's 80% of women by the time they reach their 50s with chronic diseases, 2 or more chronic diseases. And that's quite frightening, because out of those, that big number, 80% of those, according to the World Health Organization, they can be prevented through lifestyle. So through things as simple as what you're putting into your mouth every day, how much sleep are you getting, how much are you moving your body. So there's, really is so much that we can do as women, and to take that control.
Yes.
And make a hard decision sometimes, because it's not always easy.
Yeah.
But
and I think
worth it.
That's right. And it's good to know, I think, as well, that, perimenopause are because of the hormone changes, just like pregnancy and puberty, make us quite vulnerable to, or at risk for developing those chronic diseases. So it's actually a really wonderful time to be thinking about your health and doing something about it. And even if that's something small, if you can't commit to bigger changes, just changing one small thing at a time it is really, it will benefit you there as well. And I think that's the other thing, like naturopathically, we're like detectives. We want to know why something's happening, not just suppress the symptoms, which that's very much the Western medicine approach, is to suppress those symptoms. We actually want to look upstream and work out why you're getting that symptom. And when we resolve that, well, then everything improves there. I tell my clients that weight loss is a side effect of a supported and happy and nourished body. So that doesn't go alongside of calorie restriction and over exercising, like that. Those two aren't married together. But so anything that people can do is really valuable at this time. You get to choose, how do you want to be? How do you want to age? And yes, we might live to 85, 90, but what's that last 15 years going to be like for you? And you get to choose that now.
Yeah. No, that's so true. And it's something I think that if you haven't already started to think about it, now is the time to.
It really is. Yeah.
It's a day of you doing nothing is a day that you could put towards improving your health outcomes now and into the future. You want to be there. You want to be there enjoying life. Not being at the beck and call of somebody else to help you do the most basic of daily things. And it might happen in your 60s. It could happen in your 70s. So if we start doing things now, that's really powerful.
Exactly. And I think too, like we see our parents aging, or you've seen your grandparents, and sometimes people feel overwhelmed or powerless because they think, oh, that's going to happen to me. But it's really important to know that, yes, we inherit genes, but we get to choose what's switched on and what isn't. And we influence that with our lifestyle change and how we live and what we eat and drink. And so that's really, I think, important to know too, that these things are not necessarily like definitely going to happen to you. And if you are feeling overwhelmed and don't know what to do, which frankly there's so much information on the internet, it's really, and socials, and you walk into the chemist or the supermarket, there's a billion different supplements. I feel overwhelmed and confused when I walk in there, and I've got the knowledge behind me. So that's where it's useful having someone, to coach you through that and to help you just know what to do or what's going to work for you, rather than having to try lots of different things, which is exhausting. And then, how long do you do that for before you realize it's maybe not going to work for you? I had someone I spoke to once, she followed this way of eating for 9 months with no changes in how she felt or her body composition, anything. And I have to admire her stamina in doing that. But also, if it hasn't done anything for you in the first few weeks, it's probably not going to produce any changes for you. But then that can feel defeating, because then you're like, oh, well, what do I try next? What do I do next? So I often the last protocol for people, they're like, oh, I've tried everything, and then they see or hear me and they're like, kudos to them because they're willing to try one more thing. But I often am that last thing that they need to do. And I love that I get to share the gift with other women that was given to me or presented to me that I chose and took, and get to do that with them as well and help them live a active and vibrant life in this next half of life.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
That must give you a lot of joy. And
it really does.
that,
I get so excited and I get teary sometimes with my clients, and they write me beautiful notes and stuff like that. And I think I'm just really happy and I'm really honored that they take a chance with me and, that leap of faith and trust me to help them get to where they want to be. But I know that when they do what I ask them to do, when I ask them to do it, and they will get to where they want to be. So yeah, I have confidence in the process, but also I acknowledge that they have to trust me to do it and appreciate that trust. It's a real honor. Yeah.
Well, I've got your links in the show notes for people to, if they, to investigate further with the work that you do as well, and your links to your Instagram account as well.
Oh, thanks, Jo. That's awesome.
So people can go and see if they want to take that next step with you. So what is one actionable step that you'd like to leave our listeners with today? If there was one thing that they could do.
Do I want the popular one thing, or will I do or something that's going to make me really unpopular? But this, I also on my blog is lots of tips and free info, and I try to keep them into small nuggets of actionable content as well. Self-care, from my perspective, is not all mani-pedis, having a wine with your friends, all that sort of thing. Self-care is about prioritizing your sleep, 3 nourishing meals per day, most of the time. Okay, life happens, we go out, we do fun stuff, yes, but most of the time choosing 3 nourishing meals per day, getting your sleep, drinking plenty of water, taking your herbs or your supplements if that's what you have on there as well. That's the biggest acts of self-care. That they're the long-term stress resilience building things that are going to get you through your 40s and 50s in a better state of health. Yeah. So I guess self-care.
Yeah. So I've always said self-care is healthcare, because when you put yourself, it really is. It's those little decisions.
We get told, we get marketed to that the self-comfort, have the alcohol, go do having this and mani-pedis and massages are nice. Don't get me wrong. I've got a massage booked for this Friday night. Yeah. They are the icing on the cake, but your big stress resilience, your big nourishing things are the small daily actions that you take that really support and nourish your body and mind.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sarah. I've really appreciated you, chatting and telling us a little bit more about your line of work, what you do, where you've come from in order to get there to help others today. So that's been brilliant. Before we finish off today, if you could look into the future, what do you hope 80-year-old Sarah will say about current day Sarah?
Well, I think there'll be a thank you and grateful for doing, what I needed to do, and to be mobile, active, and enjoying life in my 80s and enjoying grandkids. Hopefully, I hope that my kids have some kids that I can hang out with too and travel with, but mostly gratitude for investing in myself and my health, and financial health as well as physical and mental health as well. Yeah.
Lovely. Good. Well, I hope 80-year-old Sarah will be very proud of her.
I think so. And, whatever happens, I have made decisions and choices now. I feel that I'm in control and, influencing how I feel at that time.
Well, one thing we know, definitely 80-year-old Sarah will have a really good plate to eat each meal.
Yes. Yeah. Yummy food. Really simple, actually. I'm always a simple chef, but
I'm with you.
Cook, but delicious. Yeah. There'll be cheese on my plate for sure at some point there.
That's good to you. All right. Thanks so much for your time today, Sarah.
Thanks, Jo, for having me. It's been great.
Pleasure. Thanks so much for listening and sharing your time with me today. I'd love you to hit subscribe on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast app to keep spreading these empowering messages. Please share this podcast with other incredible midlife women in your world. Join me again next week for another redefining midlife conversation. Thanks again for tuning in.